All right, so this should be, most of these videos are going to be fairly short because we're just talking about the different operators. I want to give you guys a nice little, nice broad overview of the primary operators you're going to work with. So in this video, I want to talk about do, finally, start with, and filter. They're kind of the very simple operators that I kind of wanted to glob into one video and one example project, or file rather. So we're going to start off by creating a file, example 06 simple.js. And I do have my gulp running. And now we can come over here, we can run 06 simple. And I'll pull over my, my example there. Okay, so a common thing that happens in reactive programming is you want to be able to perform some side effect with an intermediate result. And we can do this to modify elements. We can do it for debugging purposes, for writing out to the log, and so on and so on. So what do I mean by that? Well, if I do Rx observable, and let's do range starting at 1 and going 10 items. And let's say I did a map here and said A goes into A times A. And then we subscribe to it. So create subscriber simple. So we do something like that, and we obviously get the expected output there. And let's say that we wanted to do something with the value from range before it got to map. So how do we do that? Well, you do that with do. So do, A goes into console log from do A. And now we see that every time this range operator emits a new value, it's processed by do, but do doesn't affect the observable sequence at all. It passes the observable sequence back basically unchanged. The only difference is this function is now executed every time a new item comes in. So we see that. We see from do 1, and then we get our next one. From do 2, then we get our next 4, and so on and so on and so on. So do is a way to create side effects for your workflows. We also have finally. So I can say Rx observable dot range 110 finally. A goes into console log from finally A. And I can say map A goes into A times 2 this time, I guess. Subscribe, create subscriber finally. And of course we get an error because finally is not a function because I misspelled it horribly. Okay, oh, finally doesn't actually return a value. I messed that up too. Finally is a way to affect side effects when the sequence completes. So when this source sequence completes, this finally is done. So notice the finally is located right here, but it only executes after it gets completed, after this subscription is completed. Well, specifically after this range is completed, because this finally has no knowledge really of this subscription at all. It just knows that it's in the pipeline. The only thing it has knowledge of is this range. Because remember, every operator creates a new observable. So this finally only has knowledge of the range, and when the range completes, it prints out from finally. All right, straightforward stuff. That's how you make side effects. How you use it is up to you. We'll see an example of do it in finally in the last example of this whole series. Next up, let's do filter. I just want to talk about filter right now, really quickly. Filter, very straightforward. It's simply filtered by a predicate, just like .where works in link, and just like where works in SQL, and just like .filter works on JavaScript arrays. So we can say A goes into A smaller than 5, and I can say subscribe, create subscriber, filter. So now we see filter gets 1, 2, 3, 4, and then filter completes. But it doesn't complete until range is done. That's an important thing to note. This might look like it's completing right after 4, but that's not the case. It's just not producing any items right after 4. I can prove that by saying A is smaller than 2, or A is greater than 4. So see how we get 1, but we're missing 2, 3, and 4. Then we get 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then complete. So that's filter. Filter's really easy. Let's do another one. Rx observable. Let's do an interval here. 1 second, and let's subscribe to it. Create subscriber interval. Now notice what's interesting about that. Notice how interval only produces a value after its first interval. It literally calls set interval. And that might not be what we want. We might want to start off with a value. We might want the first time someone subscribes to this, or the subscription when we create ourselves. Remember, this is a cold observable. A new interval will happen every time we subscribe. But what if we wanted to start off with a value before interval got a chance to emit its first value? Well, we can use StartWith. StartWith -1. And check that out. We immediately got interval next -1, and then the code from interval started coming in. So you could kind of think of StartWith just as merging in a first value. And that's also a very, very handy operator. It's also very simple, and there's not a whole lot to say about it. So yeah, these are 3 easy operators. Do, which does side effects. Finally, which executes after the thing is done. Filter filters out elements. And StartWith starts with an element. They're all very well named. And I think that wraps this video up.